All right, the recording has started. We are able to call the meeting to order once you're ready.
Okay, let's call the meeting in order for the 9th of May, 24. Can we do a roll call? Do I do that one?
Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Steiner's looking for the link. Roll call, yes.
Yeah, I'm here. Gail Jackson, Vice Chair. Carol Curtis.
Commissioner Curtis is with us.
Okay.
Okay.
Robbie Hanovich.
Present.
Come on.
He's also with us, but I believe he's having audio issues because it looks like he's speaking.
David Steiner.
He's trying to get on. We're working on that.
Okay. Colby White.
Present.
Councilmember Harris. I think I see her up there.
Here.
Heidi Hansen.
I don't
She-
see her on yet.
Okay. Brian Gall.
Present.
Anna Melee.
Very close, very close. Present.
Claire Harper.
Present.
Tim Skinner.
Present.
Michaela Shander.
Present.
And then it does look like Vice Chair Jackson has joined us as well.
Okay. No
Here.
device. Okay. Okay, then we move on to the public comment. Items presented during the public participation input portion of the agenda cannot be acted on by the commission. Individual members of the commission may ask questions of the public, but are prohibited by the open meeting law from discussion or considering the item among themselves until the item has been officially placed on the agenda. Is there any public comment or participation?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, so we'll move on to announcements. Any reconsiderations or changes? No comments from the field, so we'll move on. Can I hear, has everybody had a chance to, should have had a chance to read the minutes from last meeting? Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second,
This is Commissioner Hanovich. I'll second that motion.
okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
One
Councilman Harris,
moment. Them who motion to approve, could you please state your name?
Commissioner
Commissioner,
Hanovich.
Thank you.
There's a second.
It was the first
um,
Put it in the chat.
Oh, you're correct. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking who the second person was, Michelle.
okay.
My screen is completely frozen and I don't hear anything. Can I get some mention from somebody if the meeting is still going?
Yes. Well, I'm not hearing anything either, actually. This is horrible.
Put in the chat that we're having.
a year or something.
Yeah.
Oh, you need teams? Restart your teams. Not terrible.
Brian Gall, we seem to have been disconnected.
Orville, I can hear you. I think they're having issues within the conference room.
Okay. I'm gonna go mute.
Misty, can you hear us now?
Yes, I could hear you.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Apologies for that, everybody.
Sorry about that. We're back on.
Okay, after a slight technical delay, City Councilman Harris, do you have anything for us today? Like she's still.
I'm sorry, I had to get back to my mic. Am I okay? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Got anything for us today?
Okay. No, I don't, except I just want to remind people on, I believe it's June 18th, or is it May 18th? I'm sorry, let me look at that date again. It's May 18th for the water rate drop-in event at the Aquaplex. So as many people as possible, we're encouraging people to attend and provide input. And I think that's probably pretty much it, other than on Tuesday night, there were 2 resolutions and neither one of them were passed or taken up for discussion. So regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict. So.
Okay. Thank you for your update. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to staff reports. How about airport operations updates?
Great, we'll start today with a discussion of our employments. Is that the updated version?
It was on there.
Okay, yeah. So looking at our employments compared to last month, we did see a significant uptick from 5,869 in March to 6,725 in April, which is pretty close to being on par with where we were this time last year, just slightly behind where we were. I think we talked last time about how if you look at the trend from 2023, in May of last year, we kind of peaked for the summer and then it started to decrease. This year, we expect a little bit of the inverse of that. Typically, April, May, June, July are some of our busier months. So we are seeing some of that uptick in flights from American Airlines. Not a huge change, but we do expect that to kind of stay.
I believe we lost sound again.
Checks.
Yes.
Hi.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm on the phone. I can't log in for some reason through Teams. So.
Not a problem. Can you state your name?
David Steiner.
Great, thanks. We are currently having a couple of technical difficulties. I will make a note that you've joined the meeting. It is 1:12, but we are waiting for everybody in the conference room to reconnect. They're having some issues with the TV, so you're not the only
Oh,
one.
okay. Okay. No problem. I'll just hang on here. No problem. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, it looks like we can see the conference room, but it's muted at this moment.
Are you muted?
Yes.
Missy, can you hear us okay now?
There you are, yes.
We tried switching over to my computer instead of Claire's to see if that can solve the issue. So let me know if you have any issues hearing us. I think we are pretty good on this end. Where did we leave off with you?
Commissioner Harris is what you left off with.
Yeah, I finished my report.
Or council member, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing anything like a presentation. Am I the only one not seeing that, or?
I can see it. I can't speak for others.
Missy, do you have a slideshow on your screen?
Gail can.
Okay.
Yeah, Orville, it seems like the presentation is being seen by other folks.
All right, I'm sure it's operator error here. Thanks.
There's plenty of that going around today.
Especially over here.
Okay, so we finished with Councilman Harris's presentation. Go on to try airport operations one more time.
Sounds good. Okay, so we will try again with employments. So what you'll notice is April, we saw a fairly significant uptick from the employments we saw in March. So from about 58 or 5,900 up to 6,700. Remember last month, we talked about how American was adding one additional flight on the Phoenix route, as well as soon to be adjusting the time of their Dallas flight to a part of the day that works a little bit better for our departures. That's that morning flight that we're seeing come in later this month. This puts us closer to being on par with where we were this time last year. So last year in April, we had 71 or 7,200 employments. So we're still a few hundred short of that, but catching up. I do, if you recall in the last month's meeting, we talked about how this was kind of the part of the year where in 2023, we plateaued before starting to decrease as Americans started reducing the number of flights they had to adjust to the market conditions and the lack of air crews they had for the regional aircraft. Kind of in an opposite position this year. We're climbing out of that still. So I would expect to see at least a steady at this level, possibly with some increase as we get into the summer months, which tend to be busier for us. Next slide, please. So for total operations, similarly, we saw a huge jump in total operations from March to April, with a little over 2,000 operations in March, up to 3,500 in April. I think that Orville might be able to speak more to this when we get to the FBO update, but my thought on this is that it's probably due to the more favorable flying weather we saw in April. March, remember, was pretty snowy this year. April, we started to kind of climb out of that and see some better flying conditions. That actually puts us ahead of where we were last year. Of course, last year in April was a very snowy year as well. So I think that's why we saw that reduction from 2020 or a lower number in 2023 versus the higher number we have this year. So again, I think May is shaping up to be pretty good for us overall. The winds have been a little bit challenging, but I do expect to see some similar operations numbers for next month as well. Any questions on employments or operations? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. This is a relatively new stat for us. So parking revenue. This is something that we wanted to start sharing as we're approaching the first year in operation of our paid parking system. So not a lot of data to see there so far, as we haven't had a full year in the system yet. But you can see in terms of revenue, we had approximately $40,000 of parking revenue in April. Compare that to $43,000 in March. There's a few things going on there. One, we have, due to some construction, we have closed our terminal lot. So all the parking is going in the economy lot right now, which has a slightly lower parking rate. So I expect that's part of the revenue change we're seeing there, but also just the fluctuations along with those employments. So as our employments start to track up, I expect to see our numbers rise similar to what we saw in the fall of last year. And Adam will be giving some updates on the construction for those projects later in the slideshow, but we are expecting construction to wrap up here within the next 6 weeks or so. And then just a reminder that right now the parking revenue is going towards repaying the loan that this airport took from the general fund to build our new economy parking lot. So we have approximately between 4.5 and 5 million to repay on that. So a little right now, we're less than a year in. We've already made a pretty good dent in that. I expect to see that revenue increase as our employments go up and we get the system a little bit dialed in. And sometime in the future, if necessary, we can talk about adjusting those parking rates. Any parking revenue questions? Okay, that's we had for airport updates for today.
Thanks. Okay, project and grant updates.
Next slide, please.
Oh, missed one.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Herbal, didn't mean to skip over you, buddy.
Orville, did you want to talk about the fuel flow first, or do you want to go ahead and share your screen now?
I just figured you'd get through your reports and then we could go from there. I'm logged in twice. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. So.
Orville, I think we finished with the airport updates. I think we're on the fuel flow. If you had any comments you wanted to make about it.
Oh, well, that was in my presentation today, but just to talk about the fuel flows, April was actually down slightly from 2023. Year to date, we're up a little bit, mainly because we had a strong January and February. March and April were down, which, I said, I think last meeting, our season's typically Easter to Thanksgiving. So, the uptick in operations, everything else, pretty typical with the seasonality of the traffic we have. Fuel flows maybe quite not so much, but probably has something to do with the weather too.
Okay.
Orville, you should be able to share your screen now for your presentation. And our conference room seems to be muted in case anyone's speaking.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah. When I try to click,
Yes.
the share button is dead on my screen. It won't work. So, such is life. I don't believe I can share what I put together. So anyway, everybody there?
Do it.
Can you hear me?
Orville, try that again. We just tried to change the permissions and it might be working now.
Search name can't. Okay, there we go. All right. So what do I do here? I pull this up. Open system settings. Sorry. Yes, there we go. And
I'm not seeing or hearing anything at this time. I'm not sure if you're still working on that, Orville.
Orville, are you still with us? Looks like we lost Orville as an attendee.
Okay. If he comes back up, we'll come back to him. Let's go ahead and do the project and grants.
Pull that one up.
Missy will be sharing momentarily.
Oh, thank you, Missy.
1 second. There we go.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Adam Yalley, Airports Program Manager. I just got 2 slides here real quick. I'd just like to kind of go over some of the projects that we're currently working on. Project before you are all the CARES grant. That's where the funding is for this particular project, these projects. And to do a quick overview of what they are and where we are on that. They're not hearing us.
Missy, are you able to hear us at the moment?
Yes, I can hear.
Did we drop off at all, or were you able to hear Adam speaking?
No, I was listening.
Okay, sounds like Vice Chair Jackson couldn't hear us for a bit, but I think that maybe sounds like it might be on her computer. If you guys are hearing us okay?
I'm back, by the way.
Thank you, Orville.
Orville, we jumped over to Adam's project, so we'll give him a chance to finish here, and then we'll jump back and see if we can get you to share that presentation.
All right, thanks. I had to reload it.
Understood. So the airport fence repair and maintenance project, that one is, I've already issued substantial completion on that project. I currently show that at 98% done. We do have a couple punch list items that they are having to address, but for argument's sake, that project is closed. You may recall that project was to do some maintenance of our current fence, tying off ends, barbed wire hangers, and so that was a very, very much needed project. Next, we've got terminal maintenance phase 1. I currently show that at approximately 86%. That was our vestibule doors when you come walking through, as well as our flat roof was resurfaced. Again, maintenance wise, we're having some leaks, and a few other little elements. Our water bottle filling station and exterior paint of the facility. So I have a project punch list or walkthrough on Monday scheduled for that project. So we're going to be moving forward and closing that out as well. Next, we've got the terminal parking lot maintenance projects. Before I go any further on that, I apologize for having the terminal parking lot closed, but this is why. Currently, we are undergoing some maintenance. This project consists of doing some isolated asphalt patches in the parking lot, as well as addressing some of the large cracks that were in the parking lot, the thermal cracks from the expansion and contraction of that material. So we're addressing those, as well as we're going to do an asphalt seal coat on that, on all the parking lot, and some striping revisions. And the phase 2 would be the rental car ready lot. That's going to receive a similar treatment as the terminal lot, as well as the staff parking lot to the west of the terminal. One other element I do want to note that's part of that phase 2 is the blue gate. That was brought under that particular project. Some of you may or may not be aware, but the blue gate was down for a bit due to mechanical issues. That gate actuator has been replaced. We now have a completely different system in there. We had some issues with the loops, so we've placed concrete and embedded the loops within the concrete. So that is pretty much done. We've done our walkthrough of that with our contractor, and that should be coming online shortly. Our terminal fire sprinkler project is moving right along very, very well. To say we're on schedule is an understatement. We're a couple days ahead of it, actually, which is a Herculean effort that our contractor Lovin has done on this project. This project consisted of three components of it. One was the pipe itself and the heads for the fire sprinkler. The next portion was what we asked them to do is we brought on two consultants to look at some ADA requirements for our restrooms, as well as our lighting, internal or interior. So that has been complete, and I show that as 100% complete. And then phase 3 is the drywall repairs associated with the installation of this fire sprinkler, as well as the painting. So currently there are a total of 9 phases in the installation of this fire sprinkler project. We have completed 8. So right now we are moving towards the final phase of this project. All of the main line has been put in, all of the laterals have been put in, and the heads. So we're doing some extra connection points at this point in time, because at each one of those phases, we met with the fire department and we did sprinkler pressure tests, and we passed all of them. So now we're moving towards completion on that project. By close of the week next week, all the painting should be done. Following that, we'll be getting some lighting improvements or maintenance, so to speak, internally here, as well as our signage. That should be starting not next week, but the week thereafter. And as it stands right now on paper, they are scheduled to finish prior to the end of the month, minus any punch work that needs to be done. Terminal lighting, indoor repairs, that the materials have arrived, that we made its own project. That lighting will be going up, as I said, not next week, but the week thereafter. Those were those large candy cane looking fixtures that were on the side of the breezeway. And we had some issues with those long-term maintenance issues. So we went with a different type of fixture that we think should provide a longer life than the previous ones, just because of the weight of those fixtures. We do have a couple other elements here that we do have bids on that we're waiting to see what our funding looks like, and that was the terminal flooring repairs and some work on some of the hangars. We just received the proposal for the hangar while we were in this meeting, as a matter of fact, so we'll look at that. One other element I would like to bring up is the cafe area, where we've been staging our construction. All of our we've been using as a staging area, the old cafe. And what we have noticed is we do have some issues with some of the flooring in there, as well as we've had some dilapidated and some bad cabinetry in there. So what we're looking to do with this particular project is perform some holistic maintenance through there, remove some of the damaged elements and address some of the damaged floors within that cafe area. So that's all of that as far as these projects. Before I go on to the next slide, which is pictures, do we have any questions?
You kind of skipped over the snow removal equipment building.
I sure did. I apologize.
And I'm interested in that after my tour yesterday, and it's a blank.
It is a blank lot. My apologies, please accept my apologies for skipping over that. The snow removal equipment building is moving forward. Where we are on that, just as quick little summation of kind of where we are is we did with our partners at the FAA and ADOT, we requested to deliver this project using an alternative delivery method, which is we're going with CMAR, which is construction manager at risk. FAA gave their determination and they approved us for this, for that delivery system, which is fantastic. Due to how volatile some of the pricing of some of the elements we're going to need for this project, we feel strongly that the CMAR would be the best way to move forward with this particular project, and while we're going through the final portions of our design. So that's what we're doing currently, is we're moving towards the city put together we put together our package for procurement to get this out on the street. We did put it out. We did have 5 applicants that were responsive and submitted their statements of qualifications. Currently, where we are in the project is we have a whole design team or a review team that's reviewing those 5 statements of qualifications. They're going through and rating that, so we're in that particular portion of review of the statements of qualifications. Those are due next week. And I would assume that we would probably be going out for interviews. So at our next commission meeting, hopefully we'll have some better news, and our plan is to try to get this before council before June or July 2nd. We'll see. But it's forward, and our design team has really kicked up into high gear on this as far as the design is concerned. And that's going to be the mechanical and the electrical components. So it's moving forward.
Do you have any best guess as to when he might be moving dirt?
My goal would be late summer, early spring. We've got some dirt that was procured to try to hopefully decrease the amount of construction costs, so we can put those monies into other components of the structure that we're going to need. So we partnered with other sections within the city for some of their capital projects that were having to haul off material. So they're paying money to haul it off. And so we would have to pay money to haul material in. Let's go ahead and not do that.
Okay.
So we are bringing in material from the 180 project and potentially some additional dirt because we need 22,000 cubic yards of material. So it looks as though through our city projects, we might be able to get that material for savings for both sections, so to speak.
Adam, Chair, can I make one clarification on that too?
Please.
So what Adam mentioned was bringing in fill from other projects that we're able to borrow some material from that will help reduce our project costs. For the contractor who's going to be building the building itself and completing the earthwork on site, we expect to have them under contract as part of the solicitation that Adam was talking about. With that CMAR process, they help finalize the design to optimize it for the products and materials they can get on the schedule they can get at as much of a reduced cost as possible. That's why we're looking to go with that delivery method. So the hope would be that by sometime this fall, we would have them under final contract, and that's when we could either start procuring long lead time items, like if there's some generators or electrical components that have a long, significant lead time, or potentially, depending on their proposed schedule, maybe start moving dirt and building stuff on site in that fall period. But hopefully, as Adam mentioned, we'll have some materials to work with from some of those other projects he's partnering with.
Thank you, Brian.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Next slide is just some pictures of the projects that we just discussed. Missy, would you mind going to the next one for me, please? There we go. Thank you. So in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see a light pole. And the significance behind that is that particular project. We've got 3 light. Yes, they are dark skies compliant for our employee parking lot. So we used to call it the overflow, but it's the employee parking lot. So we do now have 3 lights. The light next to it, to the right of that, which just shows a light, we did have to replace one of our apron lights on the commercial ramp. So we did get that completed. Below that is the blue gate that I mentioned earlier. That was part of our asphalt, our terminal parking lot maintenance project. So we did complete that. To the right of that is our fire sprinkler. That was as of yesterday morning. The repainting is going along nicely. Like I said earlier, the majority of the piping is hung, and for the most part, mostly tested. So that's good news. And we're going to go to the lower left-hand corner. We're looking at some ADA ramps there that we did replace. That's right in front of the terminal. We're doing that as part of our terminal parking lot maintenance project. To the right of that, you'll notice a pipe. It's just a little pipe. This is actually going on, this is in the controlled area. So this is going out to the air traffic control. We noticed there was a void underneath the asphalt. We did some inspections and come to find out we had a failure of one of our CMPs, which is that pipe right there, and it created a fairly large cavity. So we were able to change order that into the project and get that corrected as well. The project in the middle, the lower middle, that is at current as of yesterday morning as well. That's some of the crack repairs that we're doing as part of the terminal parking lot project. In this picture, they have went ahead and milled out those affected large cracks. They prepared the subgrade, and this will be repaved tomorrow. So they will be doing some paving tomorrow and some more paving next week. And then finally, in the lower right-hand corner is a picture dear to me because there used to be 3 old storage sheds there. From the outside, they look like a storage shed. You open them up and there was wasp nests everywhere in there. So kind of dilapidated, more of a security issue. So we went ahead and got those removed. So very exciting. And where that piece of equipment is in this picture, we did have some extra asphalt from that pipe project I was just mentioned. And so what we did is we did add a little bit of asphalt over there that was underneath those storage sheds for future use. And those are my 2 slides. Any questions?
Okay, can we go back to FBO updates if Orville is up and ready?
Hi, guys. I don't know if the share thing, if we're going to try that again, I had to reboot, give it permission. All right, let's see how this goes.
Right. Orville, I stopped sharing my screen and you are set as a presenter, so you should be able to share your screen.
All right, can you see that? Are you seeing anything?
Not so far.
Not so far. Well, all right.
Well, if you hit the share next to the leave button on the top right of your Teams, you should be able to select your screen that you want to present.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, I
So it
see.
Yeah, when
says
you
leave.
All right. Select window.
There we go.
We got it.
All right. Wow.
Wait for-
Technology. Okay, this will be pretty quick because I know you got a long report coming. So we talked about fuel flows. You can see that and hear me, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Turbine traffic, particularly jet traffic, has been pretty consistent. Military's been consistent. General aviation overall, really not all that active. It's typically busier on weekends, a little more light during the week. We are seeing, I would say, we've always seen some, but we're, with United buying the 2 flight schools down in Phoenix and whatnot, I think it's fair to say we see a more consistent amount of high school traffic out of the valley. General aviation wise, that's about it. Special activities, the McCain Institute Sedona Forum was last weekend. Traffic included the Secretary of State. That's Blinken there kind of walking off the air stairs, and some of his staff, some of my staff. He's in a C-40/Boeing 737. You can see a little bit of the motorcade. Wasn't too terrible, but there was a lot of security and whatnot, all State Department. A few more shots, some of the traffic. The blue and white was the head of SOCOM, the general that came in, and then some private, and a few of those aircraft you see in the first slide it had nothing to do with it, but others did. This is the one I hope that you can hear. We hosted the Coconino High School prom. I think this is the 3rd time I've done a prom. First time I've done Coconino, and I'll be honest, I kind of do this with my teeth grit, and I have never been more pleasantly surprised in my life. These kids were extremely polite. Most of them were very nicely dressed. The preparation, the execution, because usually people are like, hey, we want to stick this stuff up on your walls. It's like, no, you're going to rip my paint off and this, that, and the other. All the little things that you see hanging from the ceiling there and whatnot, they used magnets, which I thought was really, really smart. And they had a scissor lift where you see the lights to the left of the hangar. And this is a video. I'm going to play it for you for a second. They brought in porta potties and stuff. Honestly, I was blown away. After Blinken left, we pulled that blue and white Gulfstream up, kind of ran the cones out a little bit, and so all the kids got to take pictures in front of it. Nobody went outside the cones. There was quite a few adults there. That was one of my requirements, but we had absolutely no issues. I mean, honestly, it was an awesome statement of both the students and the faculty in this community. So I'm going to play this video real quick if you'll bear with me. I just think it's kind of neat. Hang on. I never went to prom, but I feel like I have now. Anyway, sorry. So we had the cat taken to the vet yesterday to get spayed, and we were too late. So Amelia, if you don't know, if you haven't met Amelia, Amelia Earhart is a cat that lives at the FBO, and we're gonna have some kittens around 4th of July if anybody's interested, because I'm not keeping them. Anyway, yeah, sort of, you know, what I call strategic staffing. We're interviewing, hiring. We're pretty picky because of what we do, you know, to meet the seasonal demands that we're seeing right now. Something else that I guess I've had a bit of an epiphany about lately is aircraft parking. I think after, you know, a quarter of a century, we need to kind of rethink, reevaluate how we're parking planes. You know, we typically put the large stuff right out front, and we've got the T's on one side and the T's on the other, and it really isn't working very well anymore. So I hadn't really hit Brian or Tim or anybody with this, but you know, and there's possibly this joint use agreement is going to come up for a couple of spots for the Forest Service that will have nothing to do with. I think we just need to sit down and kind of discuss, you know, maybe putting all the singles to the south and all the turbines from about the Medline north, because my big worry these days, and it's happened but not in a long time, is a lot of these larger jets, you know, when they start up, if you've got small aircraft behind them, there's the potential for damage. And, you know, ultimately myself and both the city are going to get sucked into some kind of liability issue on that. So nothing, I mean, I haven't even mentioned it to staff, to be honest. And then, you know, the last is the ongoing thing is fuel procurement, supply, and storage. You know, with some of the things I think are coming down the road, we're probably gonna have to look at putting in our tank, because basically, typically, we're 3 days out on fuel, and a lot of it's coming out of Long Beach. Phoenix has a hard time, you know, meeting our demands anyway. So with that, I will get out of this, and you can take back over if anybody has any questions.
Any questions?
Excuse me?
Just seeing if there was any questions for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Orville.
You bet.
And communication and business updates.
Thank you. So everyone should have received a email for the save the date and an invitation to the Art Walk celebration, and that's for the Coconino County Scroll, which is on the way to the Economy lot. So I know that a few of you have RSVP'd. Please do RSVP so we know if we need to post a quorum. But we hope to see you there. You will meet at City Hall for the transportation, and as part of this, the tour will start once you get on the bus for City Hall. So they do ask that if you want to be part of it, certainly hopping on at City Hall is the best part. So we look forward to seeing those of you at the event. And I see Councilmember Harris has her hand up.
Yes, I sent an email to someone about this event. I live right out by the airport, so to me, it didn't make sense for me to drive downtown and then come back and then go back. Does that make sense? So can I just drive my car out?
You certainly can. That's an option. It's just that you may miss a bit of history. I think they are starting the history on the bus as you move from City Hall to the airport. But I certainly think you're more than welcome if you just show up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this part? Okay.
Great, and then we're going to keep our other update short today, so we can get to Shannon and his water service presentation. We did want to update you on our upcoming meetings with airlines. So in 2 weeks, Brian and I will head to DC, where we'll have 20 minutes to meet with Alaska, American, Breeze, Southwest, Delta, and United. And how we come to meet with these airlines is it's kind of like a speed dating mix and match. So we rate 12 airlines that we'd be interested in meeting with. And then if they're on our list, then we get time with them. So we'll get 20 minutes, and we are in production of a video so they can really see visually the beauty of Flagstaff and everything that it has to offer. We're a Four Seasons destination. So I'm excited to, at our next meeting, share the video that we shared with our airline representatives, and then we can share a little bit of an outlook on what the future of regional services and how our meetings went.
Chair, it's Heidi Hansen, Economic Vitality Director. Sorry to bust in, but I have just got to give major props to Claire Harper and Brian Gall. They've been doing these other conferences, and Claire has actually been going to several other meetings with airlines. And we have never in the history of this airport, even when I was doing this with Barney Helmick, had this many appointments. So I just want to say thank you so much for the work to get us to this point, and excited to hear back.
Thanks, Heidi.
Appreciate the comments. We know these guys do hard work and aren't recognized enough, so thank you.
Did you also want to mention that you presented this before council?
Oh, great point.
So we can share with you that our air carrier incentive policy that we presented last month did go before council on Tuesday, and they didn't have any changes to it. We have modified the policy a little bit. We condensed it, took a few considerations and made it a lot more readable, understandable, and digestible. So at our next meeting, we can certainly share that document, but we're working with legal to just finalize a little bit of that language, but we will be able to share that we have an air carrier incentive policy when we meet with these airlines.
Good. Any questions? Claire, is that it for you?
That's all that I have.
Okay. I guess we're going to move on to the water rate study presentation.
Mr. Chair, while they pull up the presentation, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Councilmember Harris, thank you for your time. Allow me to come and share. Do just a brief update, mainly focused around the current rate study that we're doing, but trying to get information out of the community. And I guess so. I do have several slides. We did cut the presentation down. It's my intent to walk relatively quickly through the slides. While I feel the slides are important, hearing back from the commission, giving the opportunity for questions is definitely on my radar. So we can go through that through the slides. I think they'll transition those for us. Just a bit of overview. My name is Shannon Jones. I'm Water Services Division Director. Water Services is made up of water, wastewater, reclaimed water, and stormwater. Our rate structure focuses specifically on water, wastewater, and reclaimed. But just a little bit of who we are. So we do operate and maintain 4 treatment plants, 2 for drinking water and 2 for reclaim. Over 16 storage facilities for storing water, 30 drinking water wells. We do maintain actually over close to 750 miles of underground infrastructure, not including stormwater specific to these ones. Again, maintaining over almost 3,500 fire hydrants. Operating and maintain 5 pipe stands, 3 for drinking water and 2 for reclaim. These are for people not maybe connected to our system that haul water back and forth, and then reclaim water for specifically for construction, dust control, things like that. Major emphasis on regulatory regulatory compliance, I was gonna lead with, we are a highly regulated industry, but being that you're the airport commission, I think you appreciate what it means to be highly regulated. So I will spare you that. But again, focus on making sure water sustainability, being able to do what we did yesterday, today, and making sure that we have the ability to provide that service tomorrow, with an emphasis over conservation that is interesting, where you look at it as an enterprise fund, which all three of these are businesses within our community. The main difference is we're not driven by profit, we're driven by providing an unfailing service. Conservation plays in because we do deliver a product, we're not driven by promoting, right, the sale of that product. We emphasize conservation. The more that we can minimize the sale of what we provide, the more we can minimize the cost to provide it. Our division is 97 full-time employees that make up that our division. So I'm gonna break it up into multiple sections. First is about operation and maintenance. Again, I think within the presence of the airport, understanding what operation and maintenance and how that's integral. But I think for us, again, it does make up like the equipment that we use to provide our service, parts and labor to do that, materials such as oil, gas, and chemicals, the equipment and machinery that we use to provide that. These are all the costs, along with personnel, staff, that are operational costs that drive. I think the two images, my intent is, one is the image on the far right is the stuff that we plan to do, the things that we're supposed to do, the things that you expect us to do. The picture on the left is the stuff that happens in between that you're forced to stop doing what you think you're going to do that day and literally stop to put the fires out. That was from a lightning strike that one of our facilities saw that cooked our communications equipment. So I focus primarily on four of our operational costs for discussions. I talk about electrical, chemical costs for those repair and replacement parts, and personnel. The reason I focus on that is over half of our operating expense falls under those four categories. As you look back over the last 5 years, and I added a current at current year pace, you can see that those cost escalations over the 5 years. And this year we've already exceeded costs for last year, and I still got at least good 2 months left in this fiscal year. But again, what you're seeing is those cost escalations that we're seeing on the operational side for those four major components. So what happens when staff and the issues and the work that they need to do are not sufficiently funded? We revert, right? We begin to defer the maintenance and repairs to address putting out those fires, right? We begin to tip in that we start moving away from maintaining our technology in our facilities. We start chipping away at the things that build resiliency and robustness in our operations. And then we start leaning on limiting personnel resources. So to kind of put that into context, again, when things aren't sufficiently funded and you have to reach in and you have to reprioritize and move money, I feel like these are the four things that we lean to and we have been targeting, right, to make up that difference. We say, hey, can that pipe last one more year? On the technology, can we not upgrade that technology? Can we put a Band-Aid on it? Resiliency and robustness. It's like, I got a spare. I'm going to run with what we got. And again, I think that is typical in our industry, but when you do that, you begin to increase the risk, right, of things like failing infrastructure. And what was, when you don't have the spare and that main piece of equipment fails, now it becomes a fire. And I feel like you begin to pay a premium for that. So again, not wanting that insufficient funding, we want to have enough funding that we're able to not dip in and begin to take away from these initiatives that help us to be successful. So the next slide. So when we do have the benefit of funding, it talks about having that sustainable use, our ability to do tomorrow what we're doing today. That we can look at effective ways for our water institutes and administrative systems. I feel one of our disadvantages is when things get hard on the funding level, inefficiencies begin to occur. We spend a significant amount of time and resources trying to get creative to work within the means that you have. Sometimes that your solution becomes worse than the problem. But again, ultimately making sure that we're assuring the water quality and our wastewater management. Again, we focus on safety, we focus on compliance, then we focus on budget. but all three of those things have to be true. Again, finding ways to continue to invest in the repair and replacement of our aging infrastructure, and all in the time, make sure that we're retaining our qualified staff, and then we're investing into our existing staff. Are we pouring into them to make sure that they're the best employees, that they're best trained, and that they have the resources that they need in order to be successful? Again, those are our goals, making sure that we're funded. I guess a few other fun facts that we talked about, again, over 750 miles of infrastructure. Flagstaff currently averages about 6 main breaks for every 100 miles of pipe. In my world, that means it happens about 25 times a year. If each main break costs me about $100,000 from start to finish, that is $2.5 million invested in something that provides a service, brings the service back, brings it back into service, but not necessarily does always improve the system, right? Repairing a main break doesn't replace a main line. This is a picture from last year, but those that maybe follow on social media, or maybe some of the council members, knows that we just spent the last 48 hours working on a main break on 4th Street, and they're still looking to try to get that back on service. Like, it's just part of what we do. It is one of our performance measures. It's one thing we measure. So again, I appreciate when the airport talks about number of flights leaving and how much is the time between departures, and because when you have those indicators, that's exactly what they are. They're indicators of how your business is. So for us, again, 6 main breaks per 100 miles of pipe is not an extreme amount within what I would call an industry standard. So I do want to maintain to be there, but also knowing that that does push costs into the operational world. Again, average could be up to $2.5 million just in those main breaks.
That number gone up or down in the last couple of years? Or
That's a 5-year average.
okay.
And so I would say each year they do go up and down, right? I think it's definitely weather dependent. I see how main breaks, expansion and contraction of soils will wreak havoc. I think particularly the one we're working on this week, we're attributing to the high winds that we saw on Sunday. I think because of those high winds, there was actually a couple of large pine trees that's root balls were integrated into both the natural gas system and our water system. But ultimately, so it created a water leak. And then while we were addressing the water leak, one of the trees actually fell, and we had to remove another tree that was going to be at risk to safely work there. But yeah, so again, that's something that, like, you plan to have main breaks. Where you plan to have those is kind of a wait and see game. On the wastewater side, again, over almost 300 miles of sewer line, 8,000 manholes. What we see is about 6 sanitary sewer overflows a year, again, on average. As a performance measure, that is within an industry standard. But I will also tell you, when a sanitary sewer manhole overflows, your day gets disrupted, right? Resources will pull things that you should be doing to address that, and you begin tracking costs of that. How do you prevent sanitary overflows? It is the maintenance that you're doing. A couple of images shows these are some of the collection system roots, right, that penetrate. So making sure that we're maintaining the system, that we're moving roots, broken pipes. The bottom right-hand picture is a grease within a sewer line. So we do have programs for industrial use, but even at your home. So just a plug that when any grease that you have in your skillet, I would recommend you take a paper towel, wipe that out, throw that into the trash, because when you wash that down the sink, this is what it does to our sewer lines, but I'll also tell you that's what it also does to your sewer line, and you will have the same cause and effect. So that kind of segue from the operating into the capital. So why capital becomes important. The more emphasis and investment we make on the capital, the less impact I have on the operational side, and we can keep our resources doing the things to operate and maintain that. So why do we do capital improvements? Making sure we have the capacity to meet the needs of the community. Fulfilling our master planning efforts. I have a hard time. One of the hardest things for me to process is when I have a plan, right? Like a master plan saying you should do these 3 things, and you never get to do those 3 things. And every day you're faced with the consequences, right, of not completing those 3 things. The worst part is when staff tells you, it's like, well, if we would have finished what the master plan said, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. And I always point out, I was like, well, that's a great point that we will talk about later, but let's get this best service back. But again, making sure that we develop our water supplies, that we're implementing and maintaining our investment into our supplies and collection systems. And again, really trying to push and maintain that you're at this asset management level, which is a more proactive approach than that reactive. How do we continue to incorporate that into our infrastructure? And not just in wastewater, but making sure we're always looking at the advanced treatment technologies to meet the expectations of the customers we serve. So for us, what does a CIP look like? Specifically through the rate study lens. So we do have an approved CIP. I do feel like this has come up where it is our job that we take forth a budget that is balanced and within the means that we have. So what does that mean is that you also drive these other lists of informed and unfunded projects that don't make it to the CIP list because it has to fit within that financial equation. Our current CIP, both approved and are informed through the rate study, are conservative approaches. You'll see as I move through the projects, we'll list out probably 80 projects. I will tell you those 80 projects are not the comprehensive list of everything that we should be doing. These are just the things on our to-do list today. And the fact that we know that there's some of the costs on there that are probably underrepresented. But intentionally, we took a conservative approach in the CIP, specifically to the rates, because the CIP is a main driver in the impacts that you will see through our rate study. With that being said, in our rate model, we also take into account things like grant funding, that funding from outside sources. And while that's an important part, integral into how we accomplish things, being too dependent on that CIP, when that funding becomes more volatile, so does your ability to deliver those projects. So being aware that dependency on that external source, it's great when it's available, and we do leverage that, but being careful that you don't become wholly dependent on that, as well as always trying to address that we have the capacity to meet the city's initiatives and everything that we do. So this is just a map, again, showing those current 6 projects we have listed and how they kind of spread across the city. So this is really just a visual aid. So and then the CIP funding. So again, currently I would say our approved CIP, looking at the 10-year span, this is a 10-year look at our CIP, currently is funded and balanced within our means at about 130 million for water, about 86 million for wastewater, and 5.2 million for reclaim, because again, those are a focus of our 3. That being said, because we bring an approved budget and approved 5-year plan forward, but the rate model is saying we know that's not accomplishing everything that we need to do. And so on our current direction, we're looking at what would it take to fund the approved, informed, and unapproved CIP? What would it take to get to the level where we should be? And you can see those numbers begin to escalate, with water targeting about a little over $20 million a year would have to be accomplished in water to execute those plans. About 124 million over 10 years for wastewater, and reclaimed. We do track the number right, but about $7 million every year for the 10 years would have to be invested. I will note that in our rate model, the reclaimed CIP is not fully funded. So we're aware of that, but really the initiative is that water and wastewater, what would it take to fully fund those over a 10-year look? So why would we want to do that, and what are the impacts of insufficient funding? So I would say when a project on the CIP comes forward, this is kind of how to frame like how it moves through the progression. Again, if it's fully funded, pull the trigger, we execute the project, and we move to the next thing. That does not always happen for us. So when a project comes up and it's insufficiently funded, the first approach is we look at value engineering. What are things that we can do within that project that we could save money for our end users? And when we can't close that sufficient gap, we begin to strip projects down. We start taking things out of projects and we say, well, we just can't afford to do this, and we take it out. Caution always given that at the end of the day, we don't strip all the components out of a project. For at the end of the day, you're buying something that wasn't even what you intended or you started, because that can happen. So if you can't value engineer it down to how you execute it, then we begin to move into that consistent reprioritization of projects. And this is not fully funded. What is what we're gonna call a least priority on the list, and you're gonna unfund that, and you're gonna take the money to try to do the thing that you gotta do today. And you say, well, worry about that next one tomorrow, when it comes up. So that is approach, and then when that can't be done, then you take all the money and you just move a project to an unfunded list. And it's not what we'll do tomorrow, I'll say, we'll look at that in 5 years. And I think that is normal, but if you don't balance that, ultimately what happens is if you do that to a project that is a valuable asset and something that needs to be done, that project is gonna come back up. Either it's gonna become a fire you have to put out, or it's gonna come back onto your to-do list. And what I've graphed is a specific project that we're working on now is the sedimentation basins for the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, which just happens to be across the road from the end of your runways, was identified in a 2015 master plan. It said these sedimentation basins for a water source that provides up to half the water you drink, right, over the course of a year, needs new sedimentation basins. In 2014, that was estimated to cost about $3 million, and we said we didn't have it, and we moved it down the list. 2018, that comes back onto the to-do list. Okay, we really need to get this done. Problem was, that cost close to $5 million, and again, we said we don't have the money to do that, and we moved it down the list. 2013, that escalated to $7 million, and right now I'll tell you, I'm looking to release a bid for that project. I'm anticipating it's going to cost $8 million, but when the bids come in, if they're at 10, we're going to have our decision to make to either say we still don't have the money to do it, or I got to find that whatever that amount is to get that project done. Because if you move it 2 more years, I feel like that trend is going to continue to increase. And I will tell you that Lake Mary sed basins are not in a better condition now in 2024 than they were 10 years ago in 2014. And at some point, that's going to become a fire. And the costs are even going to escalate more because now you're going to be asking contractors to work around the clock under emergency conditions, and they know that you have to have it. So those are things that we try to avoid. Again, I'm not against prioritizing projects. You work within your means, you make that work. But knowing the cause and effect of postponing projects too far out will either increase in the criticality or will end up costing potentially 2 to 3 times more at the end of the day. So that takes us to our rate study background. So a couple of just things to take away on the rate study that we're doing. There was a couple of objectives. One, we needed to build a financial model, which has been completed. We established the cost of service, looking across our customer classes. What is the cost of that service we provide, and what is the proportional amount that we would expect each classification to cover in that cost? We reviewed the rate structure of how the cost of service and the classifications look. So some of the recommendation of the cost of service would be about making sure you have the right identified customer classifications, and is it proportional to the service that they provide? And then what are the adjustments needed in the rates to meet that cost of service, but also looking at miscellaneous fees. What are the other fees? Also support that idea of the cost of service, but any revenue collected through fees are revenues collected from customers that are receiving that service, and relieves the pressure of collecting the revenues from the ratepayer, right? That monthly cost. So we did also look at those, making sure we adjust those fees. The last rate study for water services was conducted in 2015. I do believe that there was a recommendation for rate increases that was approved at something less than that recommended amount, but that last rate increase did go into effect in 2020. Rates haven't changed over the last 4 years. We began our discussion with City Council in 2023. So just a couple of dates. It highlights today that we'll be going to public hearings. Notice has been issued for June 18th and July 2nd, where we're asking council to approve a rate move, with the first rate going into effect September 1st of 2024. In addition, we do have a special council session on May 16th. Will be open to the public, where they're continuing to work through kind of the nuances of what that request will look like for June 18th. And as Council Member Harris mentioned, we're also at the Aquaplex for a drop-in event on May 18th to continue just to communicate and make sure we get the information out. Just we can skip through this one. I feel like I'm taking a lot of time. I do want to touch on a couple of key assumptions within the model. The model does have to make assumptions in order to run those numbers. So things that we'll look at is a growth projection. Our model currently is looking at a 1% annual growth. The ones not in orange are things that are set by policy, cash reserves that we're required to have, looking to meet a debt service coverage. So currently that debt service is set at 20% of our operating revenues. Make sure we have a balanced budget. Cost escalators are built into the model. Currently, the model is assuming a 3.5% inflation, except for chemicals, utilities, equipment cost. Those are 3 of the 4 that I mentioned before that we're seeing those higher. The model is assuming those are at 6%. Our CIP cost escalation is a 4% escalator. So the model is assuming this is what things are going to continue to increase over that planning period. The funding sources, let's say rate revenues, fund balances, how do we use debt? Our model does assume that we're constantly consuming debt as we pay off whether it's a loan or a revenue bond, that capacity becomes available. The model assumes that that's reapplied. So this is continuing consuming water services debt. Also assumes some grant funding, about 22 million in water over that planning period and 3.2 million for reclaimed. So again, these are all assumptions built into the model. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I took a personal look because I think because these are assumptions that are done through multiple lenses, right? Whether it's consumer price indexing, looking over industry standards. I took a couple of things to look at. Well, how do we do an internal check? So for growth, because I know that'll be part of our discussion board, and it is an assumption. I took a look at residential meters installed over the last 5 years, so not growth of our city, not population growth, but I service meters. And when I looked at that, so 3.5% growth difference in meters over that 5 years. So when I look at the 1% growth, that's just for residential, I think, well, that's pretty close. How does that look to where we're at? We do install about an additional 200 plus water meters every year. And I think that's pretty close to about a 1% growth in customer base that we're seeing. The escalations, right? So we're using a 3.5 cost escalator, 6 for chemicals. On those chemicals, electrical and maintenance, when I look at our trend from 2019 to current, actually says about a 29% cost escalation. So the model using 3.5%, again, that's a lever and an assumption. But again, I just took an internal check to see, well, how far is that? And I feel that's pretty conservative. But that'll be further discussions going forward. We did go to council. And kind of talked about, well, what is the rate design priorities? When we start looking at the rate structure, what are the things that are important? These are a couple of takeaways to that discussion that revenue stability, right? Water services is not a business that you want to see go belly up or go bankrupt, right? It's an unfailing service that people expect to be there. We want to make sure that we're looking at conservation and demand management, that's integrated into our structures. Conservation is a core value of our community. That administrative burden, meaning make sure you're not burning resources doing things that you want to be streamlined, you want to be efficient, and you want to be able to explain whatever the rate is to the people who are paying it. It should be clear what's a base fee and what do I charge you volumetrically, and what do you have control over. Looking at that proportionality between customer classes, again, trying to minimize the amount of subsidy between a customer class, taking that cost of service and applying it across the people who are receiving the service, and having this lens of affordability. Try to understand the dynamic of our community and knowing that while we're not immune to that, but we are a piece of a bigger community and a cost to our end users. So lenses that we looked at for the next slide. I want to highlight, we do a lot of work where we talk about what does it mean on the bills. Every bill is dynamic. There has been a bill calculator developed, so you can go to our clean water flagstaff.com rate calculator. You can use your current billing information and plug that into that calculator, and it can give you a better window of specifically of what you can expect to see. That will continue to update as council moves through for an approval of what their rates look like. But currently, based on the proposed rate increases, that calculator will show you what you could expect year 1 through year 5 of the rate study. That being said, outside the rate calculator, because people still want to know, so we took some examples of residential customer who uses 4,577 gallons on a 3/4 inch meter could realistically expect for their water and sewer bill. The current bill would be $51.30 a month. In year one, that would move to $63.48. So about a $12 increase per month for that first year. And then we ran those out. Because we're overachievers, I still broke that down between water and sewer so you can see those cost escalations. But ultimately, over the 5 year, you can see that is looking to this individual customer's water bill, water and sewer rates would double in year 5 than what they are currently today. Our next slide does this very similar for a commercial example. So commercial customer using 51,750 gallons, their current bill for water and sewer would be about $550. First year, that would move to a $559. You can see how it plays out. These all came from the bill calculator. That's what it does for us. And by year 5, again, almost doubling by year 5. So I do acknowledge that, like typically it is, you are looking at this, that over the next 5 years, whatever you're paying today, you can expect that it would be twice as much, based on our current proposal. Okay, so how did we get to where we're at? So I think these are good takeaways. Kind of our checklist, I feel like council has been involved through the process. And how are they managing utilities and our expectations and that lens of affordability? So I feel like these are the things that council's directions and initiatives have done to minimize the impact of those rates. So again, happy to go into any one of those. I think those are very in-depth conversations, but things like utilizing actual flow versus the design flow, that minimize the impact of the capacity fees. They added a loadings calculations for your sewer bill, and that also minimized the impact of development, help incentivizing this, hoping to address like some of the housing issues, and we're not just pushing those costs off. They reduced the amount of revenue recovered from the water base fee from 29% to 25%. That empowers the end user to have control over what their bill looks like. That's your ability to use less water and see a bigger impact of sensitivity in your bill. So council did reduce the water base fee from 29 to 25%. The rate model does assume a 90% execution rate of the operating budget. So again, that minimizes the rates aren't looking to collect 100% of the operating budget, because it is my job to make sure my department works within that budget. So it does assume a 90% execution rate for the operating budget. They also did some adjustments on the residential tier rates, which really just kind of pushed the peaking into the higher tiers. Residents have one of 4 tiers based on your usage. But if you're a customer that can live within that 1 to 2, tier 1 or tier 2, the direction of council gave them more, they'd actually see more benefit and minimize the impact of those that are really being conservative with their water, driving down the use. Those higher users now will see more of those peaking costs, and it puts more onus on those higher tier, which reinforces the conservation. And again, the customer has the ability to control where and what they do with that water. They also did some consolidation of customer classes. It made the structure simpler, but it also reduced rates for some of the customers by consolidating that and spreading those costs. And they also adjusted the miscellaneous fees, which I alluded to earlier, which means those people receiving those services pay those costs and not passing it on to their ratepayer. So again, this is kind of a list of things that council already had their footprints on, that constant standing in the gap with the interest of the ratepayer and having to minimize the impact of this rate increase to the customers. Next steps, I go back to those assumptions in the rate model. So we'll be meeting with council on the 16th. Really at their will, we'll talk about whatever they want to talk about, but our intent is that we'll look through these 4 levers, I would say, within the model, so that we can see how sensitive the model is and look for council's directions on those growth projections, cost escalations, the percentage of debt, and that CIP execution. I think through the 16th, hopefully we can get council in a place where they feel like they've have the information they need to make a valuable decision, and I will stop there.
Okay, we appreciate that input. You need more money to do the job, but the money's not available, so you're gonna have to make cuts somewhere. Gee, I've never heard that before anywhere. So, but we appreciate you coming out. I don't envy your job. I don't envy you going before the council and the public with doubling my water rates in 5 years, but it looks like a necessity that needs to be addressed. So. Any questions from the crowd?
Councilmember Harris.
Councilmember Harris, do you have a question?
No, I don't. Is my hand up?
Oh,
No, I believe,
Oh, okay.
I believe actually Orville has his hand up. Sorry about that, council member.
Hey,
Okay.
Orville, do you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick, and it's kind of has something to do with this, not really. I have a real popular app for hunting called HuntX, shows landowners, and I was over towards the Winslow area, and I don't know, maybe the app's not right, but basically it shows the city of Flagstaff owns several tracts of land along the I-40 corridor all the way to Winslow. Is that for future water rights? I mean, can you speak to that? What's that about?
Yeah, I can. I think that's back probably about 20 years ago. But yeah, the city does own, it's called a Red Gap Ranch. So the city invested in a future water supply. So it is a track, multiple tracts of land out there. There are 10 wells located there. They're not built out, they're not developed. But that is what helped move the city into their 100-year water designation. So the city does have the ability to move close to 16,000 acre feet of water, which is just a little less than twice of what our current demand is now. So right now, we do maintain that as an asset. I think there's a sublease. We do lease that to ranchers, just try to recoup some revenue. I'm not getting rich off renting land, but I'm working on it. But in the future, that is a potential opportunity for city of Flagstaff, not just city of Flagstaff, but the region as a whole. We know the Southwest is definitely taxed on what the water futures look like, but the city has been able to secure about 16,000 acre feet of water rights. It was a project that would be very expensive to develop out, but it is an avenue. It is a tool in the toolbox. We take that very serious, and we do try to be good stewards of that asset for the city, and continue to monitor and also fight to continue to secure those water rights into the future as the West gets more interesting.
Right, I appreciate that. Just, out of curiosity, obviously the cost of living in our town has gotten very high lately. And I can see why you need to do this. If you were to utilize those wells out that way, would you anticipate you would have to do another rate increase someday, or would that be through bonds or something like that to build that infrastructure?
Right. I think that's a great question. I think the reality is you'd be looking at both, because I live in two worlds. So one is you got the capital cost to finishing out that infrastructure. We would be heavily dependent on, I will just tell you, federal funding, right? I'll be waiting for the federal government to write me a check to be able to pull the trigger on that. But even when they do, it's not realistic to expect that would be 100%. I would expect to cover probably 10 to 25% as a match on a good day. So that would be capital cost. Our portion would come from ratepayers, but you can also look at bonds. But once that's constructed, you're absolutely right. Conveying that water, I believe 40 miles, lifting it about 3,000 feet, will have an operating cost. The same work that we did today, you continue to work your cost of service. What is the cost per 1,000 gallons to deliver it? And how do you distribute that over the class of customers that are using it? So it would get integrated into our operational cost once you completed the capital. So I think it would be dynamic. We'd still be looking at partners, regional partners, to see how we fund that. Definitely looking at funding partners at the state and federal level for the capital cost. But the operating cost would be distributed based on the customer, whether that's regional or local, that's receiving that water service.
All right, thanks. And just the last question is, what would the population be what would you forecast how many people have to be in Flagstaff, or you have to pull from that resource? And then I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'd be making it up. I know there's the rate models, but I would say you'd be looking at doubling the population split, maybe 150,000 people. I don't know that you would do it all at once. It's hard to do all of that at once, right? You're going to need to pipeline all at once, but do I need to develop 10 wells? Could I develop 3 wells now, 3 later? I think for me, the lens is less about the population growth, driving it as the loss of a water source. I think just in our industry, that's always a reality. I feel like we've just felt it here last One of our surface water plants, which is a North Reservoir plant, brings water down from the inner basin, was taken out due to erosion from the fires that had burned. And that was a water source we didn't have available and just got restored last year, and they're continuing to work on that this year. Things like that, when you have poor water sources, that's great. Something like a catastrophic failure, a wildfire, so that takes out a water source, your models change quickly. My experience in the industry is when you see massive movements of new water sources are typically driven by catastrophic failures, right? You go into an 8-year sustained drought. Had nothing to do with the population, but you need a new water source. Catastrophic wildfires, contamination, things like that, those are typically the things that trigger it, not, in my opinion, not so much the growth. But thanks for letting me share on that.
Thanks, Earl. It just keeps that water flowing for now. When my grandson comes up here, the first thing he does is go to the fountain to get a glass of that good Flagstaff. So
We're on.
Okay, to and from commissioners. First of all, let me make some comments. One of the things I'd like to see you guys do for us is that came up in our tour yesterday is the shelters and hangar, restructuring that, we need more coverage out there. If you guys like say something maybe in September, give us kind of a, hey, here's what we're looking at. Here's some of the changes we see out there. I think it kind of goes back to Orville's question about moving airplanes around to keep damage out of the way. There was a question yesterday that came up, is all those hangars being properly utilized? I mean, are there airplanes in them or are there used car parts, that kind of thing. So if we could see that maybe, in September, give you guys some time to look at it. I think it'd be great. I want to thank Claire for putting together our tour yesterday. Robbie and I had a good time. Orville, you got a nice facility over there. Good luck on getting rid of those kittens. Does any of the other, one other thing, I'm going to be drinking wine in Paris next meeting, so I won't be here, but I want to encourage all the rest of the commissioners to please let these guys know that you're going to be available so we can establish a quorum in advance of the next meeting, so we don't end up trying to put together a meeting and then not having anybody available. So is there anybody else out there who would like to make some comments?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the cafe. You said that we're revamping that. I know a couple of months ago we talked about putting that out for bid for, it wasn't there any interest on anybody wanting to move into the cafe?
Do we have to do that as a future agenda item,
We'll
or can we
do,
just that?
we can do an update next, it's
Okay.
not on the agenda, so we'll just do an update next meeting on the cafe.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Before we did that work, just to see if it fit whoever wanted to move in.
Anybody else?
Looks like Commissioner Hanovich has his hand raised, excuse me.
Robbie?
Yep. Hey team, just wanted to thank Claire for her great tour yesterday. I appreciate her taking time out of her day to show us around the airport. It was fantastic. And thanks to Orville for his team also taking time out of their day to walk around Wiseman Aviation. That's all.
And again, there's a lot of machinery in a small space over in the snow removal and fire area. If I had a check big enough, I would write it to you just to build that kind of a gun.
We appreciate that.
Anybody else? Can I have a motion to adjourn then?
This is Commissioner White. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Commissioner Steiner, I second it.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the meeting's adjourned. We'll see you on June 13th.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, that was a great time.
Exactly on time.
Thanks.